A stranger at the gym had a tattoo of my grandpa's face. I dropped my barbell mid-rep when I saw it. The guy doing bench press 3 stations over had rolled up his sleeves, and there on his left forearm was a tattoo that made my blood freeze. It was my grandfather's face. Not just similar, asterisk identical star. Down to the specific scar above his left eyebrow from his time in Korea, the way his mouth curved slightly when he smiled, even the particular angle of the photograph I'd seen hanging in my grandmother's hallway for 20 years. The weight plates crashed to the floor, drawing stares from half the gym. I didn't care. My hands were shaking as I stared at this stranger, probably mid-30s, built like a linebacker, completely unaware that he was wearing my dead grandfather's face on his skin. I must have been staring for a full minute before he noticed. He sat up, wiping sweat from his forehead with a towel, and caught my eye. "You okay, man?" "That tattoo," I managed to say, walking closer. "On your arm." He glanced down at it, then back at me with a confused smile. "Yeah. What about it? Where did you get that picture?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. "That photograph." His confusion deepened. "From this collection I bought off Craigslist about 6 months ago." "Why? You know this guy or something?" "That's my grandfather." The words felt surreal leaving my mouth. "That's Frank Morrison. He died 3 years ago." The man's face went completely white. He looked down at his arm, then back at me, then at his arm again. "What? No, that can't be right. The guy who sold me the photos said they were just vintage military portraits. No family or anything." "What guy?" I was trying to keep my voice level, but inside I felt like I was falling through the floor. "Who sold them to you?" "Some dude named Tommy. Said he was a collector getting out of the hobby. Had a whole box of military stuff, photos, medals, some old watch." He paused, studying my face. "Holy shit, you're serious, aren't you? This is actually your grandfather?" "Tommy." Of course it was Tommy. My Uncle Tommy, Dad's younger brother, had always been the family screw-up. Gambling problems, always asking for loans he never paid back, the kind of guy who'd show up to Christmas dinner 3 hours late with gas station flowers and elaborate excuses. But this? Even for Tommy, this felt impossible. "How much did you pay him?" I asked. $800 for the whole lot. I thought it was a steal for authentic Korean War memorabilia. The guy looked genuinely sick now. "Look, if this is really your family, I had no idea. I never would have." "What else did he sell you?" "You mentioned medals and a watch." "Yeah, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, some service ribbons. And this really nice Omega Seamaster from the 50s. He ran his hand through his hair. "Jesus Christ, I can't believe this. Your uncle sold your grandfather's stuff." "Uncle." He'd figured out the family connection faster than I wanted him to. But the watch, that confirmed everything. Grandpa's Omega had been his most prized possession. He'd bought it with his first paycheck after coming home from Korea, wore it every day until he died. We'd looked everywhere for it after the funeral. Tommy had told us all that someone broke into Grandpa's house before we could sort through his belongings. Said they'd taken the military decorations, some photographs, and a few other valuables. We'd felt so bad for him, dealing with a break-in on top of losing Dad's father. Except there was no break-in. Tommy had sold our family's most precious memories to strangers for gambling money. The gym suddenly felt suffocating. I needed to sit down, but the nearest bench was occupied by someone doing shoulder presses. The stranger, I realized I still didn't know his name, was watching me with growing concern. "I'm Marcus, by the way," he said quietly. "Marcus Chen. And look, I know this is fucked up, but I need you to know I'm not some grave robber or anything." The guy seemed legit. Had all these stories about your grandfather's service, knew details about the unit numbers on the medals. Of course Tommy knew the stories. He'd heard them at every family gathering for 30 years. Grandpa never talked much about Korea, but when he did, Tommy always listened with this intense focus that we all thought was respect. Now I realized he was probably cataloging details he could use later. "Did you meet him at his house?" I asked, pulling out my phone. I needed to document this somehow. "Nah, some parking lot outside a casino in Riverside." Said he didn't like strangers knowing where he lived. Marcus laughed bitterly. Red flag number 1 that I completely ignored. Guy was antsy as hell, kept checking his phone like he was expecting someone. A casino. That tracked perfectly with everything I knew about Tommy's habits. He'd probably blown through whatever money he'd gotten from the first batch of Grandpa's things and needed more cash fast. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and please be honest. Was there anything else? Any other photos, documents, anything he might have mentioned selling to other people?" His face told me the answer before he spoke. "There were more photos in the box, yeah. I only wanted the one for the tattoo, it was such a strong face, you know. Great bone structure for ink. But he said he had other buyers interested in the family pictures." My stomach dropped. "Other buyers?" "Yeah, there's this whole market for vintage family photos. People use them for art projects, ancestry websites, some weird collectors who just like old faces." Marcus pulled out his phone. "I still have his number. Tommy Morrison, right? Same last name as your grandfather." I nodded, taking a screenshot when he showed me the contact. Tommy had used his real name, probably never imagining anyone would connect the dots. He'd always been arrogant like that. "Marcus, this might sound crazy, but would you be willing to help me? I need to find out who else he sold to, and what other family stuff he might have taken." "Are you kidding?" "Of course I'll help. I feel sick about this whole thing." He gestured to his arm. "I mean, what am I supposed to do with this now? I've got your dead grandfather's face permanently inked on my body." That was a problem I hadn't even begun to process. Marcus seemed like a decent guy who'd been scammed just like my family had, but seeing Grandpa's face on a stranger's arm felt deeply wrong. Though maybe not as wrong as what Tommy had done. "First things first," I said, "I need to call him. Set up a meeting. If he's still selling family stuff, I want to catch him in the act." "What are you going to tell your parents?" I'd been dreading that question. Mom and Dad had been devastated when Tommy reported the break-in. Dad especially had blamed himself for not getting to the house sooner, not protecting his father's legacy. Learning that his own brother had betrayed them would destroy him. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I can't let Tommy keep doing this. Those aren't just objects to us, they're all we have left of him. Marcus nodded. Whatever you need, man. This is my mess too now. I called Tommy from the gym parking lot, my hands still shaking as I dialed. Marcus stood next to his truck, close enough to hear but giving me space. The phone rang 4 times before Tommy picked up. Hey, kiddo. His voice had that forced cheerfulness he always used when he wanted something. What's going on? Uncle Tommy, I was wondering if we could meet up. I'm working on a project about Grandpa for one of my history classes, and I wanted to ask you some questions about his service. There was a pause. Oh, that's really sweet, but you know I don't remember much. Your dad would probably be better. Actually, I was hoping to hear your perspective. You spent a lot of time with Grandpa after Grandma died. I forced myself to sound casual. Maybe we could grab lunch tomorrow. My treat. Well. Another pause. I could practically hear him calculating whether I might be good for a loan. You know what, sure. How about that diner on 5th Street? Say, noon. Perfect. See you then, Uncle Tommy. I hung up and immediately felt nauseous. I'd been lying to family members for less than 5 minutes and already hated myself for it. He agreed to meet. Marcus asked. Tomorrow at lunch. I have no idea what I'm going to say to him. Maybe you should call your parents first. Get them involved. No. The word came out more forcefully than I intended. Not yet. I need to know how bad this is before I blow up the entire family. Marcus pulled up Tommy's number again. Want me to text him? See if he's got more stuff available. I could pretend I've got friends who are interested. It felt wrong using Marcus like that, but I nodded. We watched him type out a message, "Hey Tommy, my buddy loved the photos from that military collection. You mentioned having more family stuff available. He's got cash ready, *." The response came back in under 2 minutes, *funny you should ask. Just found another box in storage. Some really good pieces this time. Can meet this weekend if your friend is serious, *. Jesus, I whispered. He's still at it. There's more. Marcus showed me another message that had just come in, *, also have interested buyer for the watch if you know anyone looking for vintage Omega. Asking $1,200, *. My vision actually blurred with rage. $1,200 for Grandpa's watch. The same watch he'd worn when he walked me to school, when he taught me to tie my shoes, when he sat in the hospital during his final weeks. Tommy was going to sell it to some stranger for gambling money. We have to get it back, I said. All of it. What's your plan? That was the problem, I didn't have one. I was a college sophomore with maybe $300 in my checking account, going up against an uncle who'd already proven he'd sell out his own family for cash. But I couldn't just let this happen. Can I ask you something personal? I said to Marcus. What do you do for work? I'm a private investigator. Well, trying to be. Just finished my certification program. He smiled grimly. I know. It's like something out of a bad movie, right? PI accidentally uncovers family fraud. Are you serious? Dead serious. I mostly do background checks and insurance claims right now, but I know how to document evidence, do surveillance, that kind of thing. He gestured toward his arm. Maybe I can help make this right somehow. For the first time since I'd seen that tattoo, I felt a spark of hope. Tommy had no idea what he'd gotten himself into. We spent the next hour in Marcus's truck, going through everything he bought from Tommy. The box was in his back seat, a beat-up cardboard thing that used to hold copy paper, Morrison family photos, written in Tommy's sloppy handwriting across the side. Seeing Grandpa's life reduced to a Staples box made my chest tight. Marcus pulled out the medals first. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Korean Service Medal, all in their original cases, though the fabric was worn. I'd seen these pinned to Grandpa's uniform jacket at his funeral. Tommy had somehow gotten them out of the display case Dad had made and sold them like they were yard sale trinkets. $800, I muttered, turning the Purple Heart over in my hands. He sold a War Heroes medals for $800. If it helps, I overpaid, Marcus said quietly. This stuff is worth way more than what I gave him. The watch alone is probably $3,000 if it's authentic. It didn't help. If anything, knowing Tommy had undersold Grandpa's legacy made it worse. He'd been so desperate for quick cash that he hadn't even bothered to get fair value. The photographs were what really broke me. There had to be 50 of them, spanning from Grandpa's childhood through his final years. Pictures I'd never seen before, him with his army buddies in Seoul, dancing with Grandma at their wedding, holding my dad as a baby. Tommy had stolen our family's entire visual history. My dad doesn't even have copies of some of these, I said, holding up a photo of Grandpa in his dress uniform. Tommy must have taken them before anyone else got to go through Grandpa's house. Marcus was examining something else from the box, a small leather journal I hadn't noticed before. Did your grandfather keep a diary? I looked over. The journal was bound in cracked brown leather, held closed with a rubber band that had probably been added later. I don't think so. What's in it? Military records, by the look of it. Unit assignments, dates, some personal notes. Marcus flipped through carefully. This is probably worth more than everything else combined to a military historian. Primary source documentation from the Korean War. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy, * looking forward to lunch tomorrow kiddo. Bring your appetite, *. The casual friendliness of it made me want to throw my phone across the parking lot. He was acting like nothing had happened, like he hadn't robbed his own family blind. I have an idea, Marcus said, still reading through the journal. But you're probably not going to like it. What? Let me buy the watch from him. Set up the meeting he mentioned, show up with cash, get it recorded. Then we'll have proof he's knowingly selling your family's belongings. I can't ask you to spend $1,200 on my family drama. You're not asking. I'm offering. And besides, it's not like I'm throwing the money away, I'll give you the watch afterward. He looked down at his forearm. I owe you a lot more than $1,200 anyway. I stared at the tattoo again. In different circumstances, it was actually beautiful work. The artist had captured something essential about Grandpa's character, the quiet strength in his eyes. But seeing it on a stranger's arm still felt like a violation. There's something else we need to consider, Marcus continued. If your uncle has been selling to multiple buyers, there might be other people out there with pieces of your family's history. Photos, documents, maybe even personal items. This could be way bigger than just what I bought. How would we even find them? I've got contacts in the collector's community. People talk, especially about unusual finds. If someone bought Korean War memorabilia with family photos attached, word might have gotten around. Marcus pulled out his phone. Let me make some calls tonight, see what I can dig up. And what am I supposed to do until then? Sit across from Tommy at lunch tomorrow and pretend everything's normal? That's exactly what you do. Act natural, ask your questions about your grandfather, maybe see if he lets anything slip about the break-in. Marcus handed me back the journal. Take this with you. If he recognizes it, you'll know for sure he's been lying about what happened. The weight of the leather journal in my hands felt significant, like I was holding a piece of Grandpa himself. Inside were his thoughts, his experiences, his own words about the war that had shaped his entire life. Tommy had almost sold it to a stranger. Marcus, what if this destroys my family? My dad and Tommy already have a complicated relationship. If Dad finds out his brother did this? What if you don't stop it, and he keeps selling? How many other families' memories is he going to steal for gambling money? That hit hard. I'd been so focused on our own loss that I hadn't considered Tommy might be doing this to other people too. My phone rang. Dad's name on the screen. Hey, Dad. Hey, buddy. Your mom said you were having lunch with Uncle Tommy tomorrow. That's nice of you. I'd forgotten I'd mentioned it to Mom when I got home from the gym. Yeah, just wanted to ask him some questions about Grandpa for a school project. That's great. Tommy always looked up to your grandfather, you know. Might do him good to talk about the old man. Dad paused. He's been having a rough time lately. Money troubles again. Money troubles. While he was selling our family's inheritance. Dad, did Tommy ever mention finding anything else in Grandpa's house? After the break-in? No, why? Just wondering if anything turned up later. Sometimes burglars leave things behind. I don't think so. Why? Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I'll see you tonight. After I hung up, Marcus and I sat in silence for a moment. The sun was setting behind the gym, casting long shadows across the parking lot. You sure you want to do this? He asked. No, I said honestly. But I can't not do it either. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Grandpa's face tattooed on Marcus's arm, or Tommy's fake smile when he told us about the break-in. Around 2 a.m., I gave up and started going through old family photos on my laptop, trying to figure out what else might be missing. That's when I found the gap. Mom had scanned hundreds of family photos a few years ago for a slideshow at Grandpa's 80th birthday party. I'd helped her organize them chronologically, so I knew the collection pretty well. But now, scrolling through the digital copies, I could see obvious holes in the timeline. Missing chunks from his army days, his early years with Grandma, even some from my own childhood. I called Marcus at 7 a.m., probably waking him up. I think it's worse than we thought, I said without preamble. He didn't just take the stuff after Grandpa died. I think he's been stealing from the family for years. What do you mean? Photos are missing from way before Grandpa's death. Stuff that should have been in Mom's collection when she digitized everything in 2019. I was pacing my dorm room, running on caffeine and rage. He had access to Grandpa's house for years. He used to check on him twice a week after Grandma died. Jesus. How much do you think he took? I have no idea. But Marcus, if he's been at this for years. I stopped pacing. What if there's more stuff out there? What if he sold things to people who aren't as decent as you? There was a long pause. I made some calls last night. Asked around about recent Korean War memorabilia sales. Found 2 guys who bought photo collections in the past year that sound similar to what your uncle sold me. My stomach dropped. And one of them lives in Nevada. Bought about 30 family photos for some art project. He scans old faces and uses them in digital collages. The other guy is local, collected the photos because his own grandfather served in Korea. Marcus's voice got quieter. There might be others. I sat down hard on my bed. This is insane. How is this even legal? That's the thing, it probably isn't. If your grandfather left those items to your family in his will, or if they rightfully belong to his estate, then Tommy committed theft. Real theft, not just moral betrayal. I need to find Grandpa's will. Where would it be? Dad probably has a copy. But I can't ask him without explaining why. I rubbed my eyes, trying to think. Wait. Grandpa's lawyer. Mr. Hendricks handled the estate. He'd have records. You think he'd talk to you? Maybe. I used to mow his lawn in high school. It was a long shot, but worth trying. Marcus texted me an hour later while I was walking to class, * bad news. Tommy contacted me again. Says he has a premium buyer interested in the watch now. Wants to move fast, *. I called him immediately. What does that mean? Sounds like someone offered him more than $1,200. He's trying to start a bidding war. Marcus sounded frustrated. I told him my friend could go higher, but he's being coy about meeting up. We're going to lose it. Not necessarily. I've got an idea, but I need to know, how important is it to your family that you get that specific watch back? It's everything. Grandpa wore it every day for 60 years. It's the one thing my dad specifically mentioned wanting when Grandpa died. Okay. Then we're going to get it back. Something in his tone made me nervous. What are you planning? Let me worry about that. You just focus on your lunch with Tommy. Try to get him talking about what else he might have found in your grandfather's house. Before I could argue, he hung up. At 11:30, I was sitting in my car outside Mel's Diner on 5th Street, staring at the entrance and trying to work up the courage to go inside. I'd put Grandpa's journal in my backpack. Marcus was right that if Tommy recognized it, we'd have our confirmation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, this is Dave Chin, Marcus's brother. He asked me to contact you. We need to meet before you talk to your uncle. It's urgent, asterisk. I stared at the message. Marcus had never mentioned having a brother. Another text came through. Asterisk, Marcus is in trouble. Don't go to lunch. Meet me at the Starbucks on Campus Drive. Come alone, asterisk. My hands started shaking. Was this legitimate? Some kind of scam? Had Tommy somehow figured out what we were planning? Through the diner's window, I could see Tommy already sitting at a corner booth, checking his phone and looking impatient. He was wearing Grandpa's jacket, a brown leather bomber I hadn't seen in years, one that definitely should have been in the estate. That decided it. I texted the unknown number back, asterisk, on my way to Starbucks. But if this is some kind of setup, I'm calling the police, asterisk. The response came immediately, asterisk, it's not a setup. Your uncle isn't who you think he is, asterisk. The Starbucks on Campus Drive was nearly empty at noon on a Tuesday. I spotted Dave Chin immediately. He had the same broad shoulders as Marcus, but where Marcus looked like a friendly gym regular, Dave had the sharp-eyed alertness of someone who expected trouble. He was sitting at a corner table with a laptop open and what looked like a file folder beside his coffee. You're Frank's grandson, he said as I approached. Not a question. Yeah. Where's Marcus? And how do you know about my grandfather? Sit down first. Dave gestured to the chair across from him. Marcus is fine, but he's currently conducting surveillance on your uncle's apartment. What we found this morning changes everything. I remained standing. What did you find? Dave opened the file folder, revealing what looked like printouts of online auction listings. Your Uncle Tommy isn't just selling family photos and war memorabilia. He's been running a systematic operation for at least 3 years, targeting elderly veterans and their families throughout Southern California. The words hit me like cold water. What do you mean, targeting? Sit down, and I'll explain. Dave's voice was calm but urgent. Marcus called me this morning after you told him about the missing photos. I work in financial crimes for the county, and what you described sounded familiar. I dropped into the chair, my backpack sliding to the floor. Through the window, I could see campus students walking by, completely unaware that my entire understanding of my family was disintegrating in real time. Tommy Morrison, your uncle, has been flagged in our system for 6 months, Dave continued, pulling out another sheet of paper. We've had reports from 4 different families about missing heirlooms and military memorabilia. All of them had elderly veterans who died within the past 5 years. All of them had Tommy or someone matching his description involved in estate cleanup or family assistance. You're saying he's done this to other people? I'm saying he's a professional. Look at this. Dave turned his laptop screen toward me, showing an eBay account with the username Vintage Memory Vault. Seller history going back 3 years, specializing in authentic military memorabilia and family photo collections. Average monthly sales of $4,000 to $6,000. The numbers made my head spin. $4,000 to $6,000. Every month. Sometimes more. Last Christmas season, he moved over $15,000 worth of estate items in December alone. Dave clicked through the listing history. Korean War medals, Vietnam service ribbons, family photographs from the 1940s through 1980s, vintage watches, even some jewelry. I recognized items in some of the photos, not from our family, but the types of things that had been displayed in Grandpa's house. Military shadow boxes, framed commendations, the kind of memorabilia that every veteran's family treasured. How is he getting access to all this stuff? That's what Marcus is trying to figure out. But based on the complaint reports we have, he targets families during the grief period. Offers to help with estate cleanup, claims to have connections for donating military items to museums, volunteers to handle the difficult sorting process. Dave's expression darkened. Then he cherry-picks the most valuable items and sells them online. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy, asterisk, where are you, kiddo? I'm at the diner waiting, asterisk. He's expecting me for lunch right now, I said, showing Dave the message. Good. We need you to keep that appointment. Are you insane? If he's some kind of professional criminal. He's not dangerous, just opportunistic. And we need more evidence before we can build a case. Dave pulled out a small device that looked like a pen. This is a digital recorder. Get him talking about your grandfather's belongings, about the break-in, about anything he might have found later. I'm not a cop. I'm a college student who just wanted to understand why my grandfather's face is tattooed on a stranger's arm. Which is exactly why he won't suspect anything. Dave leaned forward. Look, I know this is overwhelming. But if we can gather enough evidence today, we can potentially help multiple families recover their stolen heirlooms. Your grandfather's watch might just be the beginning. I thought about the gap in our family photos, about Tommy wearing Grandpa's jacket like he had every right to it, about the $4,000 to $6,000 a month in stolen memories. What exactly do you want me to do? Act natural. Ask him about your grandfather's service, about what he remembers from cleaning out the house. If he mentions finding anything new, or if he talks about other veteran families he's helped, get details. Dave handed me the recorder pen. Can you do that? My phone buzzed again. Tommy, asterisk, getting worried about you. Everything okay, asterisk. Where's Marcus now? Watching Tommy's apartment building. We want to see if he's got storage units, other properties, maybe even other family members involved. Dave closed his laptop. But we need to move fast. If Tommy suspects he's been made, he could disappear with everything. I picked up the recorder pen, surprised by how normal it felt in my hand. What happens after lunch? Depends on what you find out. Best case scenario, we get enough evidence to search his property and potentially file charges. Worst case, we at least know what we're dealing with. And my family? My dad still doesn't know about any of this. Dave's expression softened slightly. That's your call. But if Tommy has been stealing from your family for years, they deserve to know. And if we can prove he's been doing this to other families too. He gestured at the file folder full of complaint reports. Your grandfather wasn't his only victim. I stood up, slinging my backpack over my shoulder and putting the recorder pen in my pocket. Through the window, I could see students heading to afternoon classes, living their normal lives where uncles didn't steal dead grandfathers' watches. One more thing, Dave said as I turned to leave. If Tommy offers to show you anything, or suggests going somewhere other than the diner, don't do it. Stay public, stay safe. You think he's dangerous? I think he's desperate. And desperate people make unpredictable choices. As I walked back to my car, my phone rang. Marcus. Dave found you, he asked without preamble. Yeah. This is insane, Marcus. Tommy's basically a professional thief. I know. But we're going to stop him. There was something hard in Marcus's voice I hadn't heard before. I just watched him load 3 boxes into his car from his apartment. He's moving product today. What does that mean? It means whatever you say at lunch might be our only shot at catching him before he disappears everything. The diner felt like a trap the moment I walked in. Tommy was sitting in the same corner booth where our family used to celebrate my birthday when I was little, scrolling through his phone with one hand while upsetly rotating Grandpa's watch around his wrist with the other. Seeing it there, on Tommy's arm like it belonged to him, made my vision blur with rage. There's my favorite nephew. Tommy stood up to give me a hug, and I caught a whiff of stale cigarettes and something else, anxiety sweat. I was starting to worry you'd forgotten about your old uncle. Sorry, got caught up in traffic, I lied, sliding into the booth across from him. The recorder pen felt enormous in my pocket, like Tommy would somehow sense its presence. Thanks for meeting me. Of course. Anything for family. He flagged down the waitress and ordered coffee, extra sweet. So tell me about this history project. What do you want to know about your grandfather? I pulled out a notebook I'd grabbed from my backpack, trying to look like a diligent student. I'm focusing on his transition back to civilian life after Korea. What he was like in those early years home. Tommy's face lit up with what looked like genuine fondness. Oh man, your grandfather was something else back then. So focused, you know. Had these big plans for his life. Saved every penny, bought that watch, he capped the omega on his wrist, to celebrate his first real job at the aircraft plant. The casual way he mentioned the watch, like it was just part of the story instead of stolen property, made my stomach turn. He really loved that watch, didn't he? Obsessed with it. Wound it every morning, polished it every Sunday. Used to joke that he'd be buried wearing it. Tommy laughed, completely missing the irony. Course, after the break-in, I figured wearing it was better than letting it sit in some evidence locker forever. The break-in, I repeated carefully. That must have been really hard to deal with on top of everything else. You have no idea. Tommy's expression shifted to practice sympathy. Finding the house all torn apart like that, seeing all his precious military stuff scattered around. Broke my heart. What exactly did they take again? Oh, the usual stuff thieves go for. Metal collections, vintage photos they probably thought were valuable, some jewelry. Tommy stirred sugar into his coffee with unnecessary focus. Lucky I managed to save what I could before the cops processed everything. The lie came so naturally I almost believed it myself. But I'd seen the eBay listings Dave had shown me, the careful photography and detailed descriptions that spoke of someone who knew exactly what he was selling and why it was valuable. Were you able to find anything later? Sometimes people miss things in situations like that. Funny you should ask. Tommy leaned forward conspiratorially. I actually did find a few more photos last month when I was helping the Hendersons clean out their dad's place. You remember old Bill Henderson from down the street? Served in Korea same time as your grandpa. My blood went cold. Bill Henderson had died in September. I'd seen the obituary in the local paper. The Hendersons asked you to help with the estate. Well, not officially. But you know how it is, people hear you've been through it yourself, they ask for advice. Tommy's phone buzzed and he glanced at it quickly. Actually found some really interesting photos mixed in with Bill's stuff. Documents too. Amazing what families just throw away. Documents? Service records, unit rosters, even some personal letters from overseas. Real historical stuff. Tommy checked his phone again, and I could see tension creeping into his shoulders. Matter of fact, I've got a collector coming to look at some items this weekend. Guy's putting together a Korean War exhibit for a private museum. The waitress appeared to take our food orders, and Tommy selected the most expensive thing on the menu, steak and eggs despite it being noon. I ordered coffee and tried to process what I just heard. He wasn't just stealing from his own family. He was systematically targeting other veteran families, using our tragedy as credentials to gain their trust. This collector, I said once the waitress left, how did you meet him? Online forums, collector networks. You'd be surprised how many people are interested in authentic military memorabilia. Tommy's phone buzzed again, and this time he actually answered it. Yeah. What do you mean higher offer? I thought we agreed on 1,200. He stood up abruptly, walking toward the diner's entrance while continuing his conversation. Through the window, I could see him gesturing animatedly, clearly agitated about something. This had to be about Grandpa's watch, someone was trying to outbid Marcus. When Tommy returned to the table 2 minutes later, his entire demeanor had changed. The casual friendliness was gone, replaced by barely contained stress. Everything okay? I asked. Business stuff. Nothing you need to worry about. But Tommy was now scanning the diner like he expected trouble, his leg bouncing under the table. Listen kiddo, I hate to cut this short, but something's come up. Rain check on lunch? Actually, I was hoping to ask you about some specific photos. I found gaps in Mom's digital collection, and I thought maybe. Another time, okay? Tommy was already reaching for his wallet, throwing a 20 on the table without waiting for the check. Family history isn't going anywhere, right? As he stood to leave, my grandfather's journal shifted in my backpack, and I made a split-second decision that probably saved everything. Uncle Tommy, wait. I found something I think belongs to you. I pulled Grandpa's journal from my backpack, watching Tommy's face carefully as I set it on the table between us. For just a split second, his mask slipped completely. I saw recognition flash across his features before he caught himself. What's that? He asked, but his voice had gone tight. I'm not sure. Found it in some old boxes Mom had stored in the garage. Looks like military records, maybe Grandpa's. I opened it to a random page, pretending to examine the handwriting. Thought you might know if it's important. Tommy sat back down so fast it made the vinyl booth squeak. His eyes were locked on the journal like it might explode. Where exactly did you find that? Like I said, Mom's storage boxes. Why? It's just. Tommy reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of the journal. I thought all of his military stuff was taken in the break-in. Are you sure your mom had this? The lie was getting harder to maintain, but I pushed forward. Pretty sure. She said she grabbed some paperwork before you had a chance to secure the house. I flipped to another page, noting how Tommy's breathing had changed. There's some really detailed stuff in here. Unit numbers, dates, even personal observations about other soldiers. That could be really valuable to historians. Tommy's voice cracked slightly on the word valuable. Mind if I take a look? Of course. I slid the journal across the table, and Tommy immediately began photographing pages with his phone. You seem to know a lot about this military collector market. You pick things up. Tommy was scrolling through photos rapidly, his earlier nervousness replaced by intense focus. This journal, though, this is special. Primary source documentation from the front lines. A serious collector would pay serious money for something like this. How much money? Tommy looked up from his phone, and I saw calculation in his eyes. Hard to say without having it authenticated. But conservatively. 3, maybe 4,000. Could be more to the right buyer. My grandfather's personal war journal. His private thoughts and experiences from the worst period of his life. Tommy was pricing it like a commodity, probably already planning how to steal it from us just like he'd stolen everything else. That's incredible, I said, trying to sound impressed rather than disgusted. You really think there are people who'd pay that much? Oh, absolutely. I know a guy in San Diego who specializes in Korean War documentation. Collector named Richardson, pays top dollar for authenticated pieces. Tommy handed the journal back to me, but I could see he didn't want to let it go. You should really consider having it appraised. Richardson. I made a mental note to tell Marcus and Dave about that name. Tommy's phone rang, and this time the conversation was even more heated. What do you mean someone else is interested? We had a deal. No, I can't go lower than 1,500. Fine, but this is the last time I work with you people. 1,500 now. The price on Grandpa's watch had gone up $300 in the span of our lunch conversation. When Tommy hung up, his face was flushed with anger. Sorry about that. Business is getting complicated lately. Sounds stressful. You have no idea. People think this stuff is easy money, but there's real skill involved. Knowing what's valuable, finding the right buyers, building relationships with collectors. Tommy checked his watch, Grandpa's watch, and grimaced. Speaking of which, I really do need to run. Got a meeting in Riverside at 3. Riverside. The same city where Marcus had met Tommy to buy our grandfather's belongings. Before you go, I said, could you do me a favor? That collector you mentioned, Richardson. Could you give me his contact info? For the journal. Tommy hesitated, clearly torn between his instinct to control any potential sale and his desire to get away from our conversation. Tell you what, let me reach out to him first. Feel him out about his interest level. Then maybe the three of us can meet this weekend. That would be amazing. Thanks, Uncle Tommy. He stood up again, but paused before leaving. Hey, do me a favor and don't mention the journal to your parents yet. Sometimes these collector types get spooked if they think too many people know about valuable pieces. Better to keep it quiet until we know what we're dealing with. Sure thing. I watched through the diner window as Tommy hurried to his car, already back on his phone before he'd even started the engine. The moment he drove away, I called Marcus. How did it go? He answered immediately. He took the bait completely. Photographed half the journal, started pricing it like inventory. I was walking quickly toward my own car, adrenaline making me jittery. Marcus, it's worse than we thought. He mentioned the Hendersons, that's another local family who lost their father recently. I think he's been systematically targeting every veteran family in the area. Dave's going to want to hear this. Where's Tommy headed now? Riverside. Meeting at 3, probably about the watch. He mentioned the price has gone up to 1,500. Shit. My contact fell through, the guy I was working with got cold feet about bidding higher. There was frustration in Marcus's voice. But I've got another idea. Can you meet me at Tommy's apartment complex in 20 minutes? What are you planning? Nothing illegal. But if he's moving merchandise today like I think he is, we might be able to follow him to wherever he's storing everything. As I drove toward Tommy's apartment, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, *, this is Richardson. Tommy Morrison said you have Korean War documentation for sale. Very interested. Can we meet this evening, *. My hands nearly slipped off the steering wheel. Tommy had already contacted his buyer about stealing Grandpa's journal, less than 10 minutes after leaving the diner. I forwarded the text to Marcus and typed back to Richardson, *, absolutely. What time works for you, *. The response came immediately, * 6 p.m. I'll bring cash if the documentation is authentic. How much are we discussing, *. I stared at the phone, realizing I was now negotiating the sale of my own grandfather's stolen journal to catch the man who'd been robbing my family for years. Tommy mentioned $4,000. Does that work, *? Perfect. I'll see you tonight, *. I met Marcus in the parking lot of Tommy's apartment complex, a rundown place called Sunset Gardens that had probably never seen a sunset worth photographing. His truck was parked behind a dumpster where we could watch the building entrance without being obvious about it. Richardson already texted me, I said, sliding into the passenger seat. He wants to meet tonight at 6. With cash. Marcus whistled low. Tommy works fast. What did you tell him? That I'd sell him the journal for 4,000. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. I can't believe I'm negotiating the sale of my grandfather's war diary to catch my own uncle. It's not actually for sale. We're just gathering evidence. Marcus handed me a pair of small binoculars. But this Richardson contact could be huge. If he's buying from Tommy regularly, he might have stuff from other families too. Through the binoculars, I could see Tommy's beat-up Honda Civic parked in front of Building C, but no sign of Tommy himself. The complex looked like the kind of place people lived when they were between better options, peeling paint, dead landscaping, and a pool that had been drained for what looked like months. How long have you been watching? About an hour. He came back from lunch, went up to his apartment for maybe 10 minutes, then came down with 2 more boxes. Marcus pointed to a storage unit facility across the street. Drove them over there, came back empty-handed. Storage units. Of course. I focused the binoculars on the facility, Storage Mart, one of those places where people kept their overflow lives locked behind metal doors. Think that's where he's keeping everything? Has to be. No way he's moving this much merchandise through a 1-bedroom apartment. Marcus checked his phone. Dave's running background on Richardson now. If this guy's been buying stolen goods knowingly, we might be able to get multiple criminal charges. A door slammed somewhere in the complex, and we both turned to see Tommy emerging from Building C again. He was carrying what looked like a small suitcase and moving with the kind of focused urgency that meant business. There he goes, Marcus said, starting his truck as Tommy got into his Civic. You ready to do some surveillance? Following someone in real life was nothing like the movies. Tommy drove exactly the speed limit, used his turn signals religiously, and stopped completely at every stop sign. We had to hang back 3 car lengths to avoid being obvious, which meant occasionally losing sight of him at traffic lights. This is nerve-wracking, I said, watching Tommy's car disappear around a corner. What if we lose him? Then we know he went to Riverside, and we wait for him to come back. Marcus accelerated slightly as we turned onto the freeway on-ramp. But my guess is he's not going straight to his buyer. Professional thieves usually have a process, authentication, photography, maybe even cleaning or minor restoration. 20 minutes later, Tommy exited in Riverside near the casino district. But instead of heading toward the gaming area, he drove to what looked like a coin and collectibles shop called Golden State Memorabilia. Through the storefront window, we could see glass display cases full of military items, vintage jewelry, and old photographs. Authentication, Marcus said grimly. He's having Grandpa's watch professionally appraised before the sale. We parked across the street and watched Tommy disappear into the shop carrying his small suitcase. The storefront advertised expert appraisals and estate purchases in faded gold lettering. My phone rang. Dave Chen. Where are you right now? He asked without preamble. Riverside. Following Tommy to what looks like his authentication contact. Good. Because I just got off the phone with Richardson, and we have a big problem. Dave's voice was tight with urgency. Richardson isn't just a collector. He's a dealer with connections to auction houses and private sales nationwide. If Tommy's been selling to him regularly, stolen family heirlooms could be scattered across the entire country. The weight of that hit me like a truck. How many families are we talking about? Based on Richardson's purchase records that I was able to access, potentially dozens. This goes back at least 5 years, maybe longer. Dave paused. There's something else. Richardson mentioned that Tommy has a premium collection he's been saving for a major sale. High-value items he's been holding for the right buyer. Through the shop window, I could see Tommy talking animatedly with an older man who was examining something through a jeweler's loupe. Probably Grandpa's watch, getting its official appraisal before being sold to fund Tommy's gambling addiction. What's a premium collection mean? Could be anything. But given Tommy's pattern, I'd guess he's been cherry-picking the most valuable items from each family he's robbed. Wedding rings, rare metals, vintage watches, maybe even gold jewelry. Dave's voice got harder. The kind of stuff he couldn't risk selling immediately without drawing attention. Marcus was photographing the shop's exterior and license plates of cars parked nearby. Professional documentation, building the case one detail at a time. Dave, what happens tonight when Richardson expects to buy the journal? You're going to sell it to him. What? Not really sell it. But we need Richardson to incriminate himself on record. If he's knowingly buying stolen goods, we can use that to pressure him into cooperation. Dave paused. He might be our best shot at finding out where everything else ended up. Tommy emerged from the shop 45 minutes later, now carrying a manila envelope along with his suitcase. Probably documentation proving Grandpa's watch was worth even more than he thought. As we followed him back toward the freeway, my phone buzzed with another text from Richardson, * change of plans. Can we meet at 8 p.m. instead? And bring any other family documentation you might have. I'm particularly interested in complete collections, *. Complete collections. He wanted everything, not just the journal, but anything else Tommy might have told him about. I showed the text to Marcus, who immediately pulled over and called Dave. Richardson just moved the meeting to 8 p.m. and asked for complete collections, Marcus said into the phone. This feels like it's escalating fast. I could hear Dave's voice through the speaker. It is escalating. I just got word that Tommy's been flagged by casino security in 3 different locations for suspicious cash transactions. Large bills, frequent visits, always paying off markers in cash. What does that mean? It means he's not just stealing to feed a gambling habit. He's stealing to pay off gambling debts. And those kinds of debts. Dave's voice trailed off ominously. Those kinds of debts what? Those kinds of debts get people hurt when they don't pay up on schedule. As Tommy's car disappeared into traffic ahead of us, I realized we weren't just chasing a family betrayal anymore. We were racing against whatever deadline Tommy was facing, trying to save what remained of dozens of families' legacies before he sold them all to pay for his mistakes. And we had less than 4 hours to do it. By the time we got back to town, Tommy had vanished. His car wasn't at his apartment, the storage facility, or any of the usual spots Marcus thought to check. It was like he'd evaporated, taking whatever remained of our family's history with him. This is bad, Marcus said, pulling into a gas station parking lot so we could regroup. If he's spooked about something, he might accelerate his timeline. My phone rang. Tommy's name on the screen. Hey kiddo, he said, and I could hear traffic noise in the background. Listen, I've been thinking about that journal. The more I consider it, the more I think we should move fast. Market for Korean War stuff is really hot right now. Move fast how? Well, I talked to Richardson, great guy, very reputable, and he's willing to make an offer sight unseen based on the photos I took. We could have cash in hand by tonight. I put the phone on speaker so Marcus could hear. Tonight seems rushed. Don't we want to get it properly authenticated first? Already handled that. Had a colleague of mine take a look at the photos, and he confirms it's the real deal. Richardson's offering $4,500, firm offer, cash on delivery. The price had jumped from $4,000 to $4,500 in the span of 2 hours. Either Tommy was inflating the numbers to make his cut bigger, or Grandpa's journal was worth even more than anyone realized. That's incredible, Uncle Tommy. But I should probably talk to my parents first. Actually, that's the thing. Richardson's flying back to San Diego tomorrow morning, so it's tonight or we lose the opportunity entirely. Tommy's voice had that strange cheerfulness that meant he was lying about something. I know it seems fast, but these serious collectors work on their own timelines. Marcus was frantically typing on his phone, probably updating Dave about this new development. Where would we meet him? Richardson staying at the Marriott downtown. Nice, public place. We could meet at the hotel restaurant, do the exchange there. Tommy paused. Look, I know this is a big decision, but $4,500 could really help with your college expenses. Your grandpa would want his stuff to benefit the family, right? The manipulation was so blatant it made me nauseous. Tommy was using Grandpa's memory to pressure me into letting him steal from us. You know what, Uncle Tommy? You're right. Let's do it. Really? That's fantastic. I'll text you the details. And remember, don't mention this to your parents yet. Let's surprise them with the good news after everything's finalized. After he hung up, Marcus and I sat in silence for a moment, watching evening commuters fill up their cars around us. You realize you just agreed to help your uncle steal your grandfather's journal, Marcus said finally. I agreed to catch him in the act. I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded. With Richardson, with money changing hands, with everything documented. Marcus's phone buzzed with a response from Dave, ** hotel meeting is perfect. We can set up surveillance, record everything, get both Tommy and Richardson on tape. But we need backup plan if something goes wrong, **. What kind of backup plan? Marcus started his truck, pulling back onto the street. The kind where we find out where Tommy's keeping everything else before he has a chance to disappear at all. As we drove toward downtown, my phone lit up with a text from Richardson, ** excited to see the journal tonight. Tommy mentioned you might have additional family documentation available. I'm prepared to make substantial offers for the right pieces, **. Additional family documentation. Tommy was already trying to upsell items we didn't even know were missing. I screenshot the message and sent it to Dave, then typed back to Richardson, what kind of additional documentation interests you? The response came immediately, ** service records, unit rosters, personal correspondence, even family photographs from the era. I'm assembling a comprehensive Korean War archive. Money is no object for authentic pieces, **. Money is no object. Richardson wasn't just buying stolen goods, he was actively encouraging Tommy to steal more. Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Shoot. When this is over, when Tommy's caught and Richardson's caught and everything's documented, what happens to the tattoo? To my grandfather's face on your arm? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, navigating through downtown traffic. I've been thinking about that too. I could get it covered up, or laser removal, or... He paused. Or I could keep it, if your family was okay with that. As a reminder that sometimes good things can come from terrible situations. What do you mean? I mean maybe your grandfather's face on my arm is what saved his legacy. Without that tattoo, Tommy could have kept stealing from your family for years. Other families too. Marcus pulled into the Marriott parking garage. Maybe Frank Morrison's final mission was stopping a thief. 20 minutes later, we were sitting in Dave Chen's unmarked car outside the Marriott, watching hotel guests come and go while Dave tested recording equipment and coordinated with backup officers positioned throughout the building. Richardson checked in 3 hours ago, Dave said, adjusting something on his surveillance headset. Room 847. Paid cash for 2 nights, which is unusual for business travelers. What if Tommy doesn't show? I asked. What if he figured out something was wrong? Then we wait, and we watch, and we build our case slowly. Dave handed me a small transmitter that looked like a button. But I don't think Tommy's going anywhere. Not when he's got a $4,500 payday waiting. At 7:45 p.m., my phone buzzed, * running a few minutes late. Richardson's excited to meet you. This is going to be great for everyone, *. Everyone except the families Tommy had robbed, I thought. Everyone except my dad, who was going to learn tonight that his brother had been stealing their father's memory for gambling money. But as I watched hotel guests walking past our surveillance car, heading in for dinner or business meetings or whatever normal evening plans people had, I realized something had changed inside me. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was determined. Tommy had made one crucial mistake. He underestimated how much our family's legacy meant to us. How far we'd go to protect it. Tonight, he was going to learn exactly what that mistake would cost him. At 8:17 p.m., I watched Tommy Morrison walk through the Marriott lobby carrying a leather messenger bag that had belonged to my grandfather. I recognized it immediately. Grandpa had used it to carry his teaching materials back when he worked part-time at the community college after retirement. Seeing Tommy treat it like his own personal briefcase made my chest burn with rage. Target acquired, Dave's voice crackled through my earpiece. Subject is carrying what appears to be a vintage leather messenger bag. Can you confirm if this belongs to your family? It's Grandpa's, I whispered into the transmitter clipped to my shirt collar. He used it for 15 years. Marcus squeezed my shoulder from where we sat in a hotel bar, positioned to watch the restaurant entrance. Stay focused. We're almost there. Through the glass partition, I could see Richardson standing up from a corner table as Tommy approached. He was exactly what I'd expected a high-end memorabilia dealer to look like, silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of confident bearing that came from never doubting your own importance. Mr. Morrison, Richardson's voice carried clearly as they shook hands. And this must be Frank's grandson. That's right, I said, standing to join them. My legs felt unsteady, but my voice came out normal. Thank you for meeting on such short notice. Of course. Tommy's told me remarkable things about your grandfather's documentation. Richardson's eyes were already focused on the messenger bag. Shall we sit? Tommy was practically vibrating with nervous energy as we settled into the booth. He kept checking his phone, glancing toward the restaurant entrance, drumming his fingers on the table. Whatever deadline he was facing, it was close. Before we begin, Richardson said, pulling out his own phone, I hope you don't mind if I record our conversation. For authentication purposes. I nearly laughed at the irony. Not at all. Richardson placed his phone on the table between us. Excellent. Now, Tommy mentioned you have a Korean War journal with unit documentation and personal observations. May I see it? Tommy reached into the messenger bag and pulled out Grandpa's journal, setting it on the table like it was his property to sell. Richardson's eyes lit up as he opened it, carefully examining the handwriting and paper quality. Extraordinary, he murmured, photographing several pages with a high-end camera he'd pulled from his briefcase. This is exactly the kind of primary source material serious collectors prize. The handwriting appears period authentic, the paper has the right aging characteristics. Tommy said you might be interested in other family documentation too, I said, following the script Dave had coached me on. Absolutely. Complete collections are always more valuable than individual pieces. Richardson looked up from the journal. What else do you have available? Tommy's phone buzzed, and his face went pale as he read whatever message had come through. Actually, Richardson, I was hoping we could expedite tonight's transaction. I have other buyers expressing interest, and... Other buyers? Richardson's tone sharpened. I thought we had an exclusive arrangement. We do. I just meant, the market's really competitive right now. Tommy was sweating despite the restaurant's air conditioning. Maybe we could discuss that premium collection I mentioned earlier. Premium collection? I asked, trying to sound curious rather than horrified. Tommy glanced at me, then back at Richardson. Well, over the years I've acquired some really exceptional pieces. Items that deserve to be in serious collections rather than sitting in storage. What kind of items? Richardson leaned forward, genuinely interested. Military decorations from multiple conflicts. Some Congressional Medal of Honor documentation, Distinguished Service Crosses, even some pieces that belonged to generals. Tommy was talking faster now, building momentum. Family jewelry, vintage watches, correspondence between military wives during wartime, really unique stuff. My blood froze. Congressional Medal of Honor documentation didn't just disappear in random break-ins. Tommy had to be stealing from museums, historical societies, maybe even military archives. How many families have you worked with? Richardson asked, and I could hear the greed in his voice. Dozens. I've built relationships throughout Southern California. When veteran families need help with estate management, they call me. Tommy's phone buzzed again, and this time he actually answered it. Yeah. No, I told you, the payment's coming tonight. I understand the timeline, but... He stood up abruptly, walking toward the restaurant's entrance while continuing his conversation. Through the window, I could see him gesturing frantically, clearly arguing with whoever was on the other end. Richardson watched him go, then turned back to me with a predatory smile. Your uncle seems to be under some pressure. Gambling debts, I said, deciding honesty might get Richardson talking. He's been stealing family heirlooms to pay off casinos. I see. Richardson didn't seem surprised or concerned. Well, that explains his eagerness to move inventory quickly. Though I must say, his eye for valuable pieces is exceptional. How long have you been buying from him? About 18 months. He's provided some truly remarkable items. Richardson pulled out a tablet and showed me photos of military medals, vintage photographs, and jewelry. This bracelet belonged to a Gold Star mother from World War II. These purple hearts came from 3 different Korean War veterans. And this watch. The screen showed an Omega Seamaster that looked identical to Grandpa's. Same model, same vintage, even the same type of leather band. Tommy sold you that watch. Last month. Beautiful piece, exceptional provenance. I sold it to a private collector in Texas for $8,000. Richardson swiped to another photo. The documentation Tommy provided was impeccable, service records, family letters, even photographs of the original owner wearing it. $8,000. Tommy had sold someone else's grandfather's watch for $8,000 while planning to sell ours for $1,500. Tommy returned to the table, his face flushed and his hands shaking slightly. Sorry about that. Business call. Mr. Morrison, Richardson said smoothly, I was just telling Frank's grandson about some of the exceptional pieces you provided. Perhaps we could arrange to see this premium collection you mentioned. Tonight? Why not? I'm prepared to make substantial purchases if the quality matches what I've seen from you previously. Tommy's phone rang again. This time he just let it go to voicemail, but I could see panic creeping into his eyes. You know what? Tommy said suddenly. Let's do this. Tommy stood up so abruptly that his water glass nearly tipped over. Let's go see the collection right now. Everything's in my storage unit, 10 minutes from here. Tommy, wait, I started, but Richardson was already gathering his things. Excellent idea, Richardson said, his eyes gleaming with the prospect of a major purchase. I brought $15,000 in cash, anticipating multiple acquisitions. $15,000. In the span of 2 hours, this had escalated from a $4,000 journal sale to Tommy liquidating his entire stolen inventory for gambling debt money. Actually, I said, trying to buy time for Dave and Marcus to reposition, maybe we should finish the journal transaction first. Make sure everything's properly documented. Tommy's phone buzzed with a text, and when he read it, his face went completely white. No, we need to move now. Richardson, you said you wanted the premium pieces. Tonight's your chance. Through the restaurant window, I could see Marcus in the bar, talking rapidly into his phone. Probably coordinating with Dave about following us to wherever Tommy was storing everything else he'd stolen. How extensive is this collection? Richardson asked, standing and pocketing his recording device. 3 storage units worth. Metal sets from 15 different veterans, photo collections dating back to the 1940s, jewelry, watches, even some Civil War pieces. Tommy was moving toward the exit, practically pulling us along. But I need everything gone tonight. Cash deals only. 3 storage units. Tommy hadn't just been stealing from grieving families, he'd been operating a full-scale theft ring, probably for years. Tommy, I said as we walked through the lobby, this seems really rushed. Are you sure you don't want to? Kid, some opportunities don't wait. Tommy's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Richardson's cash, he's serious, and he's leaving town tomorrow. This is happening. My earpiece crackled with Dave's voice, we're following at distance. Keep them talking. Try to get specifics about locations and inventory. In the parking garage, Richardson led us to a black Mercedes SUV with Nevada plates. I'll drive, he said. More secure for transporting valuable items. As we climbed into Richardson's vehicle, Tommy's phone rang again. This time he answered immediately. I know what time it is, he said, his voice tight with stress. The money's coming tonight, I guarantee it. What do you mean additional interest? We agreed on 12,000. Fine, 15, but that's it. I'll have your money by midnight. $15,000 in gambling debt, due by midnight. Richardson had brought exactly 15,000 in cash. This wasn't coincidence. Tommy had calculated precisely how much stolen merchandise he needed to sell to save his own skin. Tommy, Richardson said as we pulled out of the garage, those phone calls are making me nervous. Is there something I should know about your current situation? Nothing that affects our business. Just some creditors getting impatient. Tommy was navigating from the passenger seat, directing Richardson toward the storage facility across from his apartment complex. But that's why we need to move fast tonight. Storage unit security? Richardson asked. Minimal. Access codes change monthly, but I keep up with the manager. We'll have privacy. Tommy checked his phone again. Richardson, just so we're clear, you brought cash, right? Not checks or wire transfers. 15,000, as promised. Though depending on what I see, I might be willing to negotiate higher for exceptional pieces. Tommy's laugh was bitter. Everything's exceptional. Question is whether you can recognize quality when you see it. As we turned into the storage mart facility, I caught sight of Marcus's truck in the distance, headlights off but definitely following. Dave's voice buzzed through my earpiece, we have visual on your location. Units are positioned at all exits. Whatever happens, stay safe and keep recording. Tommy directed Richardson to Unit 47C, near the back of the facility where the security lighting was dimmer. As Richardson parked, Tommy was already out of the SUV, punching numbers into the electronic lock with practiced efficiency. Gentlemen, Tommy said as the metal door rolled up, welcome to the Frank Morrison Memorial Collection. And about 50 other families' legacies. The storage unit was packed floor to ceiling with military memorabilia, family photographs, and personal belongings that represented decades of stolen memories. Metal cases stacked on folding tables, boxes labeled with different family names, even military uniforms hanging from a portable clothing rack. My God, Richardson breathed, stepping into the unit with his phone already out, photographing everything. This is extraordinary. In the corner, I spotted Grandpa's watch collection case, the wooden box he'd kept on his dresser, containing not just the Omega but 3 other vintage pieces I remembered from childhood. Tommy had taken everything. How much for the entire unit? Richardson asked, his voice hushed with reverence. Everything, as is. Tommy's phone buzzed with another text. When he read it, his hand started shaking again. 12,000, Tommy said quickly. Cash, right now, and it's all yours. Deal, Richardson said, pulling out a thick envelope. But I want documentation for provenance. Family names, service records, anything that proves authenticity. Tommy gestured to a filing cabinet in the back corner. Everything's organized by family. Full documentation for every piece. As Richardson began examining the filing cabinet, I realized this was our moment. Tommy had just confessed to systematic theft, Richardson had just agreed to purchase obviously stolen goods, and everything was being recorded. But as Tommy's phone rang one more time and his face went from white to green, I realized we might be dealing with more than just gambling debt. Yeah, I'm getting your money, Tommy said into the phone. But if you touch my family, the deal's off permanently. Family. Tommy's deadline wasn't just about money anymore. It was about keeping all of us safe. As Tommy hung up the phone, his hands were visibly trembling. The confident salesman persona had completely cracked, revealing someone who looked genuinely terrified. Richardson, we need to speed this up, Tommy said, his voice cracking. That 12,000, I need it in the next hour. Of course, Richardson replied, but something in his tone had shifted. He was studying Tommy more carefully now, like a predator sensing weakness. Though given the time pressure, I think 10,000 is more appropriate. What? No, we agreed on 12. That was before I realized you're in distress. Distressed sellers rarely negotiate from positions of strength. Richardson's smile was cold now. 10,000, take it or leave it. My earpiece crackled with Dave's voice, something's wrong. We're seeing movement around the facility perimeter. Multiple vehicles just pulled up to the front entrance. Through the storage unit's open door, I could hear car doors slamming in the distance. Tommy heard it too, and his face went completely white. Oh God, he whispered. They followed me. Who followed you? I asked, but Tommy was already grabbing items from the storage unit, shoving medals and photographs into a duffel bag with desperate efficiency. Richardson, 10,000, right now, Tommy said, his voice high and strained. We need to leave. All of us. But Richardson was backing toward his SUV, clearly having second thoughts about whatever he'd walked into. Perhaps we should postpone. You're not going anywhere, a new voice said from behind us. 3 men had appeared at the storage unit entrance, blocking our exit. They looked like exactly what I'd feared, the kind of people who collected gambling debts in ways that didn't involve paperwork. Tommy Morrison, the lead man said, consulting something on his phone. You missed your payment deadline. I have your money, Tommy said, holding up the duffel bag. Richardson, please. The cash. I'm not paying $10,000 in the middle of whatever this is, Richardson said, already reaching for his car keys. The lead debt collector, a massive guy with neck tattoos and dead eyes, stepped closer to Richardson. Nobody's leaving until Tommy's debt is settled. 15,000, plus 3,000 in late fees. 18,000. Tommy's voice cracked. You said 15. That was 2 hours ago. Interest compounds, Tommy. You know this. My mind was racing. Dave and Marcus were positioned somewhere outside, but these guys had clearly come prepared for trouble. And I was trapped in the middle of it, still wearing a wire, still technically trying to gather evidence against Tommy. Look, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Who's the kid? Neck tattoos asked Tommy. My nephew. He's not involved in this. Tommy was sweating profusely now. This is between us. Family's always involved, Tommy. You know that too. The threat was implicit but clear, and suddenly I understood why Tommy had been so desperate to move everything tonight. This wasn't just about gambling debt anymore, it was about protecting the family from the consequences of his theft. Dave's voice buzzed through my earpiece. Police are in position. Keep everyone talking. Do not engage directly. Richardson, I said, turning to the dealer who was clearly calculating his exit strategy, you said you brought 15,000. That would cover most of what Tommy owes. Richardson laughed bitterly. I'm not paying this man's gambling debts. You're paying for stolen merchandise, I said, deciding to burn everything down. This entire storage unit is filled with items Tommy stole from veteran families. Including my own grandfather's belongings. The silence that followed was deafening. Richardson stared at me, then at Tommy, then at the storage unit full of military memorabilia. You told me you were a legitimate collector. I am legitimate, Tommy said desperately. These families needed help. These families needed their inheritance, I said, my voice getting louder. You stole from grieving people to pay gambling debts. Neck Tattoos was watching this exchange with growing interest. Tommy, you've been selling stolen goods to pay us back. That's not exactly. Tommy stammered. Because if you've been stealing from military families, that's federal crime territory, Neck Tattoos continued. We don't do business with federal criminals. Too much heat. Everything was falling apart simultaneously. Tommy's buyers were walking away, his debtors were getting nervous about federal attention, and somewhere outside, law enforcement was closing in on the entire operation. And I was standing in the middle of it all, still holding my grandfather's journal, wondering if Tommy's mistakes were about to get all of us hurt. Actually, Richardson said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about who I am. He pulled out a leather wallet, flipping it open to reveal a federal badge. Special Agent Richardson, FBI Art Crime Team. I've been investigating Tommy Morrison for 6 months. The storage unit went dead silent. Tommy's face cycled through confusion, horror, and finally a kind of defeated understanding. Even Neck Tattoos took a step back, clearly reassessing the situation. You're FBI. Tommy's voice came out as a whisper. We've been tracking stolen military memorabilia sales across 4 states. Your name kept appearing in our investigation. Richardson, Agent Richardson, gestured toward the storage unit. This represents the largest recovery of stolen veteran belongings in Bureau history. My earpiece crackled with Dave's voice. Frank, we're moving in. Federal agents are taking lead. Stay exactly where you are. Neck Tattoos was already backing toward the storage facility's exit. We don't want federal problems. Tommy, your debt just became your own issue. Wait, please, Tommy started after them, but Richardson stepped into his path. Mr. Morrison, you're under arrest for trafficking in stolen goods across state lines, wire fraud, and violation of federal laws protecting veteran memorials. Richardson was pulling out handcuffs with practiced efficiency. You have the right to remain attorney. Frank. I heard Marcus calling my name from somewhere near the facility in trance. FBI. Don't move. Everything was happening too fast. Federal agents were swarming the storage facility, Tommy was being handcuffed next to boxes of stolen family memories, and I was still standing there holding Grandpa's journal like an idiot. You planned this, Tommy said, looking at me with something between betrayal and admiration. You set me up. You set yourself up, I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. 3 years ago, when you decided our grandfather's legacy was worth gambling money. Agent Richardson finished reading Tommy his rights, then turned to me. Mr. Morrison, we're going to need your full cooperation in cataloging these stolen items. Your family's belongings will be returned, but we need to identify materials belonging to other victims. How many other families? Based on preliminary inventory, at least 47. Possibly more. Richardson gestured toward the filing cabinet Tommy had organized so meticulously. Your uncle kept detailed records of every theft, every sale, every family he targeted. He documented his own crimes. Marcus appeared at my shoulder, breathing hard from running. You okay? I think so. I looked around at the chaos, federal agents photographing everything, Tommy sitting in the back of an FBI van, storage unit contents being carefully cataloged as evidence. Is this really over? The criminal part is, Agent Richardson said, overhearing. But recovery and restitution will take months, possibly years. Some items were sold to private collectors who bought in good faith. Getting everything back to the right families will be complicated. Dave Chin approached, looking simultaneously relieved and exhausted. Frank, we need you to come to the federal building tomorrow morning. Full statement, victim impact documentation, the works. As they loaded Tommy into the federal vehicle, he caught my eye through the window. For just a moment, he looked like the uncle I'd known growing up, not a criminal mastermind, just a broken man who'd made increasingly desperate choices. But then I looked at Grandpa's watch collection case, sitting among evidence boxes like recovered treasure, and remembered that some choices couldn't be forgiven. Only survived. Agent Richardson handed me a business card. Mr. Morrison, what you did tonight, gathering evidence, coordinating with law enforcement, risking personal safety to protect other families, that took real courage. I just wanted my grandfather's watch back. You got a lot more than that. You stopped a multi-state theft ring and helped recover irreplaceable family memories for dozens of veteran families. Richardson paused. Your grandfather would be proud. As federal agents secured the crime scene, I finally allowed myself to believe it was really over. Tommy would face federal charges. The stolen items would go back to their rightful families. And somewhere in Texas, a private collector was going to get a very interesting visit from federal agents about an Omega Seamaster he bought in good faith. Come on, Marcus said, putting his arm around my shoulder. Let's go home. Your parents are going to want to hear this story. All of it. All of it. The good, the bad, and the federal agents. As we walked toward Marcus's truck, I realized I was still carrying Grandpa's journal. Soon it would go back to my family, where it belonged. But first, it had one more job to do, helping federal prosecutors build a case that would ensure Tommy never stole anyone else's memories. Some missions, I thought, take longer to complete than others. 3 months later, I stood in the community center where our family held Grandpa's annual memorial service, watching my father carefully arrange recovered items on the display table. His hands shook slightly as he positioned the bronze star next to the Purple Heart, both back in their original cases after serving as evidence in Tommy's federal trial. 43 families got their belongings back, Dad said quietly, adjusting Grandpa's Omega Seamaster, finally home on his wrist where it belonged. 43 families who thought their loved ones' memories were gone forever. The memorial service had become something bigger this year. Instead of just our extended family, we'd invited all the families whose belongings Tommy had stolen. The Hendersons were there, along with the Kowalskis, the Garcias, and dozens of others, all connected now by shared loss and unexpected recovery. Marcus stood near the back of the room, still somewhat uncomfortable at family gatherings. The tattoo on his arm had become something of a local legend, the image that started the investigation that brought down a multi-state theft ring. He decided to keep it, adding script underneath that read, Frank Morrison, never forgotten. Uncle Tommy got 8 years federal, my cousin Sarah said, joining us at the display table. Dad says it could have been worse if he hadn't cooperated with returning everything. 8 years felt both too long and not nearly long enough. Tommy had testified against his network of buyers and authenticators, helping federal agents recover stolen military memorabilia worth over $300,000. But no prison sentence could undo the years of betrayal, the families who'd mourned twice, first for their loved ones, then for the stolen memories. Agent Richardson had driven down from Los Angeles for the service, bringing news about the wider investigation. We've identified similar theft rings in 12 states, he told me. Your case became the blueprint for tracking stolen military memorabilia. Other families are getting their belongings back because of what you did. Mrs. Henderson, Bill Henderson's widow, approached carrying a small wooden box. This was supposed to be stolen, she said, her voice emotional. But I found it yesterday, hidden behind some books. Bill must have put it there before he died. Inside the box were letters, dozens of them, written by Grandpa to Bill during their time in Korea. Letters we'd never known existed, full of observations about the war, worries about home, and the deep friendship that sustained them through combat. Frank wrote about you, Mrs. Henderson said to Dad, showing him a letter dated 1952. About hoping his son would grow up in a world where wars like this weren't necessary. Dad couldn't speak. He just held the letter, reading his father's words about hopes and dreams for a future that had, in many ways, come true. As the service concluded, I found myself standing outside with Marcus, watching families load their recovered treasures into cars. Wedding rings returned to children. Military medals going home with grandchildren. Photographs that would hang on walls again instead of sitting in evidence lockers. Any regrets? Marcus asked. About Tommy? About any of it. I thought about the phone call that morning when Agent Richardson told me Tommy's creditors had been arrested in Nevada. Apparently their debt collection business involved more than just gambling. About how exposing Tommy had accidentally helped the FBI shut down a broader criminal network. No regrets, I said finally. Grandpa always said the hardest missions were the ones worth completing. Marcus nodded, unconsciously touching the tattoo on his arm. Think he would have approved of how everything turned out. I looked back through the community center windows, where families were sharing stories about recovered memories, where Dad was carefully packing Grandpa's journal into its proper place in our family's collection. I think he would have said that protecting family never requires approval, I said. It just requires courage. And sometimes, I thought but didn't say, it requires a stranger at the gym having your grandfather's face tattooed on their arm. Some stories begin in the strangest places. But they all end the same way, with family, with truth, and with memories finally safe where they belong.